Hi, my name is Philippe Etter. I'm going to now coach you through the question of US, because there's been also quite a lot of activities of IVD COVID-related makers to get their products approved. And we will see also that there are different ways of doing which have been implemented by the FDA. So in the US, there is a principle, a system that is named EUA for Emergency Use Authorization, where the state can trigger the authorization for simplified access to the market. In the past, this has already been triggered several times, for example, during the Zika, or when there was the nasty enterovirus, or Ebola, or the MERS. It's a tool where the government can decide to tell the FDA, let's simplify the access to the market. Now, the principle of an EUA is that non-approved medical devices can be put on the market providing they are adequate, providing there is no approved and available alternative. It means that, for example, for the COVID testing, if there would have been tests already available, then the probability that the FDA would have given EUA would have been way lower. Still, the FDA may have given such an authorization because of the available quantities for the market. But it's not what happened. What happened is that the FDA clearly indicated that there was no test, and everybody knew there was no test, like it usually happens when there is a pandemic. So the FDA started, as we will see a bit later, to emit a series of guidances which have evolved throughout time. The desire was to make available as quickly as possible various types of tests to the community. On March 16, basically the FDA opened the throttle. It means the first guidance says pretty much, if you have something that can help, but not only on the IVD side, also respirators. There's been also work on the protective personal equipment side. If you have a product that can contribute to the handling of the disease, you can pretty much notify us and put it on the market. A bit later, there's been a first tightening with the need for a formal request. It means probably they realized that if they would keep on, it would just be a big mess on the market. On April 28th, another adjacent pathway was opened, which would allow, it's called Umbrella EUA. It would allow some tests to be used by accredited lab, but only for the time being. There's been a limited amount. I mean, to my knowledge, only one device that has been approved through this pathway. So the main pathway remains that a manufacturer register using a series of templates and using an email address, sends a package to the FDA reviews, and within something like 15 days, the FDA come back with an authorization. Now, in May 4th, there's been an updated policy for the diagnostic device where the manufacturers needed to provide a little bit of evidences and also needed to upgrade the labeling by putting on the labeling information such as this device cannot be, for example, used alone as a mean for diagnosing COVID. Now, the big shock has been very recently, last week, when the FDA released a list of 31 serology tests where the FDA pretty much said it's not working. These devices are not providing sufficient specificity, sensitivity. So these devices are namely listed. You can find them using this link. And it's really a bit shocking. I mean, what you can immediately see is that most of these devices come from Asia. And probably this was also a sort of shock for some of the manufacturers. So we can expect that in the following days and week, the list of the 31 will increase because the FDA is requesting data from the community using these devices. When you get the authorization for EUA, you get the letter on the right, which tells you Mrs. X, Mr. Y, you get the approval. The device can be used in these circumstances. Currently, the database is available. You can go through the links I supply in another slide. There's 85 entries in the database for EUA IVD, because there's other EUA for some specific therapies related to the COVID, specific respirators, for example. Out of these 85, there's 68 molecular tests, 13 serology tests. Part of it is one antigen rapid test. We believe that there's a lot of others which are currently in development. Parallelly to that, the FDA has also approved some 32 molecular diagnosis, PCR based. These devices have been developed by labs themselves. Labs have the right to develop tests. Same in Europe under the 15189 accreditation, for example. The labs have the right to develop a test and to use it for their own purpose. And that's what happened also with 32 different tests which are listed. The process is based on templates. That is what is good usually with the FDA, is when they introduce something, they quickly provide templates. And you can have here the links to the various templates. Of course, with such a running process, there's been updates to the templates that need to be used. But these templates give you a pretty good information about what is expected. You can expect 2-3 weeks reaction time. Now, of course, we will see a bit later that the outlook's going to gradually change because gradually the FDA will expect the manufacturers to go through a regular authorization pathway. I talked before about the use environment requirements. You have 3 different levels which are listed on the website of the FDA. In the list of tests that are approved, some are approved only for high complexity accredited labs. Some are approved for moderate complexity labs. It means the labs have a different level of accreditation. It's not exactly like 15189, but it's similar. And you also have the W code, which is for typically health institution like elderly clinics, etc., who have a certain type of waiver which allows them to use these tests. Now, what's going to happen in the future? In the future, we already know that a COVID test is a class 2. There's 3 classes in the US, 1, 2, 3. It's, by the way, quite shocking to see that in the US, a COVID test will be a class 2, whereas in Europe, it will be the highest class, which is a class D. That's a pretty important difference. Now, there's been a very recent announcement last week from Mr. Stencil, the person by the FDA in charge of this division, IVD, who said that the agency, the FDA, has received questions about how long these EUA authorizations will last. Of course, you cannot expect them to last forever, because somehow they form a very important simplification when compared to the regular process for a Class 2 device, which is named 510K. So the position of the FDA last week was that it was unlikely to be terminated soon. I mean, he said that 2 times in a row. So that means that in the spirit of the FDA, the window will remain probably open quite a while for EUA. It means the FDA foresees that there's a lot of demand, but also there's a lot of space for better and better and better tests. Because as we could see before, there's a bunch of tests which have been considered by the FDA as low quality, if not crap. For a manufacturer, what is important, I mean, for a company who is in Europe or in the US and who would like to get prepared for this market for a longer time, because it seems that we're going to have this COVID for a while, it's important to prepare for a 510K from now on. It means you wouldn't recommend to have a company to benefit from an EUA to start selling and selling and selling without acquiring data, without structuring the data, without preparing the technical documentation for a proper 510K. Now, the bottom line is that for the time being, nobody has applied for a de novo, because the principle of the 510K is that you can apply for a 510K providing there is a predicate. So it looks like the companies are looking at each other, waiting for the first one to apply for a de novo, which will create a product code, which will enable other manufacturers to come behind with their documentation saying, I would like to apply for a 510K and get this device approved. What we can see, and that is interesting, is that the FDA reacted, I would say from a regulatory professional standpoint, quite quickly. I mean, everybody can complain about the current situation in the US, which is very scary, but the FDA, as usual these last years, has been very quick at writing guidances, communicating them. The FDA is very approachable. If you have a question, you send a mail, you get a response quite quickly. It's amazing as compared to what you get from European national competent authorities. Currently in Europe, the Commission is trying to build a sort of umbrella above the national competent authority to try to homogenize the behaviors and the authorization that are given by these various competent authorities. But this is a very complicated process. Finalized with the idea that all of this is running, there's still a lot of updates to be collected, and probably throughout the process, the FDA will increase her expectation like she always does. It means the FDA will analyze the performance of these products on the market. Of course, the FDA gets way better feedback from labs than she will get from other health entities once there will be devices spreading the market for maybe self-test even, or at least test by doctors. The more remote the use of the test will be, the more difficult it will be for the FDA to collect information. But still, the FDA will work on that and collect data in order to increase the safety related to this type of devices. Voila. I was very happy to provide this update, which was not very technical, but the intent was to give you an overview of what is happening in the US. And if you would like to put your product in the US, you can call us and we will give you some support on how to get prepared for that. Thank you very much.